The Bobby O Show.
I have my Yale sweatshirt on today. This is the Bobby O, Bobo Potsner. And you can imagine during this NCAA March Madness season what the show is about today. The Yale basketball program, which had a phenomenal 2023-2024 season and won the championship for the Ivy League and also won its first game in the NCAA tournament. And I'm honored and privileged to have two special guests. I have the head coach of Yale, Coach James Jones, and I have Richard Kent, who writes the Ivy Hoops Online. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Robert.
Welcome aboard, folks. It's nice to have you on today. Coach Jones, I just want to give a little bit about your background because you're a very humble guy, but you have won 396 games, if I'm correct, in the Ivy League. You've been to the NCAA tournament multiple times. Yale started its program in 1896 and has been to the NCAA tournament 7 times. 4 under your tutelage, and 3 prior to coming on board in 1999. Coach, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being on.
And Richard, welcome to you as well.
Thanks, Bob.
Coach, you don't have a basketball team every year. You have a program, in my opinion. You've developed a wonderful program since 1999. When I was at Yale, basketball wasn't that successful. It was always Princeton, Penn, Princeton, and a few times Harvard had some good teams. But you came on board in 99, and you've turned the basketball program around in a positive way. How did you do that, Coach?
Well, I'm very fortunate and blessed. I have a great group of assistant coaches that have helped me every step of the way. I'd be nothing without them. And we've been able to recruit some quality student athletes and then try to convince them how to play basketball the right way. Try to recruit kids that are mindful of one another and not involved into themselves as much. And then trying to take it from there, understanding what's important to the coaching staff, defending, rebounding, and sharing, and really having our guys play to that. And we've been very fortunate and very lucky to be able to have found these young men. And again, my coaching staff is great. And it's been really good and been a great ride here, especially the last 10 years with our program.
Richard, you've been a Yale follower. In fact, you're from the New Haven area originally. You and I have been to many, many basketball games, and you do the Ivy League Online. Talk to me a little bit about what you've observed in the development in a positive way of the Yale basketball program under Coach Jones.
There's 2 eras of Yale basketball, before Coach Jones and after Coach Jones. Yale right now is the premier program in the Ivy League. Princeton may be a close second, but Yale's the premier program. Yale is the program that people talk about from the outside, and they talk about Coach Jones and his staff, his incredible continuity, his incredible dedication to Yale being there for so many years, and his incredible development of players. I mean, you've got players that some were highly recruited. Obviously Jordan Bruner was a highly recruited kid, but others were not highly recruited, and the development from freshman, sophomore to junior year has just been incredible. And coach rarely turns the keys over to a freshman. I'm pretty sure that he did with Bez Mabang, who's a junior on this year's team, about to be a senior next year. But it's really the development of the players and the continuity of the program.
The positive publicity that Yale got from CBS was phenomenal in this tournament. We're going to talk about the Auburn game in a second, but after Yale beat Auburn, there were several segments with Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith, who played at Carolina. And there were such positive things, but when you saw the Yale players speak, it was so impressive. When you saw the coach speak, it was so impressive, and it was great publicity for the Ivy League and for Yale. And I hope that the Yale administration and student body appreciates the positiveness that was brought not just to the basketball program, but to the university. Coach, let's talk about coming into the 2023-24 season. Did you have expectations?
Of course you do. Like, my expectation is every year we're going to be really good. Like you said, we develop a program and it works. And we've gotten some really good players, and just trying to blend them together to get the most out of them and get to have them get the most out of themselves is really what you want to try to do. I actually thought that we underachieved somewhat this year, especially early on. It took us a while to find our stride. But we really came together late in the season and were able to, win the conference tournament, as you mentioned, and then go on and beat Auburn. It took a special group of guys to come together and pull together to do that. And, our better players didn't have a great game. Danny Wolf and Bez Mabang didn't play great, but John Poulikitis was spectacular. And, August Mahoney and, other guys contributed. And that's what it takes to be successful. You always don't have to have everybody on every game to be really good. If you have a program, you can do it with multiple guys. And we had a lot of good players on this team. And again, I'm just blessed to have so many good people around me.
One of your players is Matt Knowling, who's a senior, who's from Connecticut. I always like to see Connecticut players on the Yale team, but he had some injuries, and you had to deal with some injuries this year, which I suppose is part of what every team deals with. But did that cause any problems for you during the season developing when you had Matt Knowling injured, missing several games?
Well, Matt Knowling was the preseason player of the year in our league, and it didn't really have any problems other than the fact that I thought if he was 100% healthy, he would have been better. It took him a while to catch his stride. He had an ankle problem at the beginning of the year, and we played Gonzaga the first game, and he wasn't going to miss that. So he hurried himself back a little bit, and that may have stopped his progress somewhat. And he got over that injury, and then he developed a groin injury that he had throughout the Ivy League season. But it's amazing how good he was even playing injured. Like, he didn't practice every day for us, and most days he didn't practice because of his injury. But when you went out in the game, you never noticed there was anything wrong with him other than some of his lateral quickness he was a little slow that way. But, you look in the scorers column, he gets you 12 and 8 every game, and he was really steady. His ability to shoot and score in and around the basket, the shot he made against Brown to win the championship was nothing short of amazing, but he takes that shot every day and practices every day in practice. And again, he had a great year for us, and he's kind of the forgotten man because we had so much more talent, so much talent around him, but he's a really good player, and we don't do what we do without him.
Coach, if my recollection is correct, I was at the Cornell game on a Saturday afternoon, I think it was, and I believe Matt Knowling also hit the same kind of shot at the buzzer to win the game. And I thought when I was watching the Brown game with Yale in the Brown championship game, with Yale down by about 5-6 points with 27 seconds to go, and then the last play that went to Knowling, I thought, and I could be wrong, that was a very similar play that he had in the Cornell game as in the Brown game. Was that the call for you to have in that play in the Brown game?
Well, so what happened was the Cornell game was an out of bounds play. So we were running offense, and it got down to about 6 seconds, and I didn't like it. And I called a timeout, and we got the ball out of bounds under, and we had a play. And to be honest with you, Matt was probably the second or third option on that play. But Bez Mabang they ended up trying to switch, and the kid on Cornell's team kind of fell down, which left Matt open, and Bez was able to find him, and he was able to hit that floater along the baseline. It was basically from the same spot. His body was he was more perpendicular to the baseline on a shot against Brown, but it was eerily similar. And again, that he's got a sweet touch and a sweet floater. And, he's been able to win us a couple of games with it. And we're obviously happy for that fact.
I believe the expectation when the Ivy League tournament came around that Yale had the tougher draw. We had to play Cornell first, and then we had to play the winner of Princeton, which was the number 1 seed, against Brown. Was the expectation once you were going to play the tournament that you'd be playing Cornell and then Princeton, but all of a sudden you had to play Brown in the championship game? Did that change your approach, the players' approach? Were they saying, well, it's Brown, they were 4th seed, we're going to have an easy match, or was it not that kind of mental set?
No, we didn't do anything for either team in the week prior as we got into the weekend of the Ivy Championship. We just worked on Cornell and practiced for Cornell. So we were just in that mode, one game at a time. And then when Brown won, it was just, okay, we're playing Brown. And we just want to move on and do the best we could against them. They had just beaten us the week prior in our own building on senior night. We had a 10-point lead with 5 minutes to go and blew it. And so our guys were hungry and they wanted another shot at Brown. And it couldn't have worked out better for us. Again, we were fortunate to win it. Brown played a great game. They're well coached, really good players, and they got really hot at the end of the year. And again, we were fortunate to win it. But going into the year, I thought we were the best team in the league, and that was the way we had to prove it.
Richard, in my observation, I can ask your opinion as a longtime Yale basketball fan, that the 4 teams in the Ivy at the top were as good of 4 teams together. I mean, you had better Princeton teams and better Penn teams and Harvard teams in the past, but the quality of the 4 teams at the top this year, I thought was one of the best I've ever seen in the Ivy. Any thoughts about that, Richard?
Well, I would say 3 teams: Yale, Princeton, and Cornell, in that order. I mean, Brown came on towards the end of the year, and they were playing great when they beat Princeton and they took Yale down to the wire. But I really think that the 3 teams, you look at Cornell, they played Ohio State without their best player. So tough, 1-point lead with 58 seconds to go on the road at Ohio State in the NIT. Obviously, Yale won an NCAA game against Auburn, and Princeton made it to the NIT. So I'm gonna limit it to 3 teams, but I thought that Brown was playing really well when it beat Yale and then beat Princeton and took Yale down to the wire in the Ivy tourney.
I will say this to you as an observer. I think that Yale was underseeded this year. I thought 13th seeding in the NCAA tournament was lower than it should have been. And I thought there should have been some consideration for a second team from the Ivies into the NCAA tournament. And as I read about maybe expanding the tournament to perhaps more than 68 teams, as high as 96, I keep hearing about how the big schools in the SEC and the Big Ten need to get more teams in. I think we need more teams from the mid-majors to be available to get an option and an invitation to the NCAA. Coach, you have any thoughts about that?
I got a lot of thoughts about that.
Thanks, Coach.
The problem with it, the metrics don't work in a mid-major's favor. If you're going to look at the big prevailing factor, which gets you in a tournament, a quad 1 wins, well, mid-majors don't get a chance to have too many quad 1 games, and they don't have any at home. So, for us, we have to go on the road and beat a Kansas at Kansas, beat Gonzaga at Gonzaga, 2 teams that would actually play us. It takes an act of Congress to actually beat those teams on the road. It's just really difficult and tough. Now, if you had some of those teams play in your own building, or if you got some of those teams like we played Auburn on a neutral court, that's totally different. If we would have played like the women's tournament, if we would have played the first round at Auburn, it would have been almost impossible to beat them on their home court with their home crowd. And it's a whole different ballgame. So the way the metrics are set up, it works against us, but that doesn't mean the teams aren't good enough to make it. 2 years ago, we ended up winning the Ivy League championship outright. Shared it with Princeton. And I thought we were the better team. And then we ended up losing to them in the championship. We were the number 1 seed, but we lost to them because we played on their home court. And we had to beat them for a 3rd time because we had beat them twice earlier on. 2 years prior to that, we had beaten Princeton at Harvard in the conference championship, and they were the number 1 seed. And I thought they were a better team. So last year, when they went to the Sweet 16, our best team, meaning in my mind, Yale, we didn't even make the tournament. And Princeton, our second best team in my mind, they go on to the Sweet 16. So certainly we could have had two teams that were good enough to play an NCAA tournament and good enough to win games. So that's just the way it works. And until they change the data in terms of how they look at teams, it's almost impossible for Yale or the Ivy League to get an at-large bid.
I have spoken to Richard in the past, and he disagrees with this theory, but I believe that if the NCAA, which I have no respect for, no offense, I think NCAA, if they can get it wrong, will get it wrong. But I've suggested to Richard, and he's laughed at this, that in order to give the mid-majors some chances to play a really good team, that whoever has the first round game in the 2024 NCAA tournament, the first game the following year should be at the home court of the winning team. So, for example, you beat Auburn. So that means, under my theory, Auburn has to play Yale the following year in New Haven. Maybe it's a Meshuggah, maybe it's a crazy idea, but it's my approach to try to even things out. And you guys are both smiling. Any thoughts about that theory?
Yeah. Bruce Pearl would laugh at you. He's never coming to Yale to play a game. That's just not going to happen. Like, it's funny. I think it was Jim Boeheim said this. Like, for the longest time, they never left the state of New York to play a game. They would play all their games at home or at Madison Square Garden in November and October. November and December. They play all their home games. They play all their games at home or at Madison Square Garden. And because of the money factor, there's just too much money involved for them to go on the road. Every time they open up the building in Syracuse, New York, there's millions of dollars that are made. So if they go on the road, there's millions of dollars lost. So that's just not going to happen. Then they want to try to win games, and you're going to win a lot more games at home than you are on the road. So from that perspective, it just makes it very difficult for teams to want to go out and do it. And you rarely see a team like, I think Indiana played at it, like Indiana State or something like that a few years back, and they lost. You rarely see teams that would go on the road and challenge themselves at a place like Yale, a good mid-major team. You're just not going to see that happen.
A lot of times in the past, if a player was from, let's say, upstate New York, big teams might go to that school to play. Like, for example, Christian Laettner was from Buffalo area, and Duke played at Canisius. And I think the more you have mid-majors playing, the better. Let's get to the Auburn game. Having said what I said about the seeding situation, I thought Auburn would be a very, very tough match for Yale. And I don't know what your thoughts were going into the preparation. So please tell me, Coach, what did you do in terms of preparing to play the SEC champ in Spokane, Washington? I don't know how many hours, must have been a 7-hour flight, who knows. But what did you do to prepare for that game?
Well, one of the things I did is I showed our team the 2016 highlight tape. Brandon Sherrod, who's on our staff, he was playing in that game, and I showed them the highlights from it, and also from Duke as well, the two games we played in the NCAA tournament, and just tried to talk to them about what was possible. And our team, they got going around. The players on the team, they kind of felt like their team was better than Brandon Sherrod's team, so they had a chance to go out and prove that they're better, right? Because we ended up beating Baylor his year. So just to give them the idea of understanding that we could do something special. And then going to the game, I obviously felt like Auburn was going to be a really tough out, was going to be really hard for us to beat them. Like, they were one of the better teams in the country. Like, if you look at KenPom, I think they were like 4th in KenPom in terms of their offense and defense efficiency. So they were really great on both sides of the ball. So we were going to have our hands full. And it took a great game by John Poulikitis to give us an opportunity. But at the same time, I don't think we played our best. We turned the ball over too much in the first half. We had 8 turnovers, and we didn't shoot the ball well from the free throw line. I mean, we were like 50% from the free throw line or thereabouts. So given those factors, it gave us a great chance. And it just told me how good this program and how good this team is, that you can go out and beat an Auburn team, albeit after a player was ejected for throwing an elbow. But to beat an Auburn team that's that good in a neutral site, that just gives more fuel to the fire about how good some of the mid-major teams actually are.
Coach, I was at the 2016 game in Providence when y'all beat Baylor. I was actually sitting right in front of, luckily, Chris Dudley. If he'd been in front of me, I would have had a problem watching the game, but he was sitting right with me with a bunch of Yale players, and the enthusiasm and yelling and screaming was phenomenal. Those who don't know, Chris Dudley played at Yale many years ago, and that was in the NBA for many years as well. So that was a great victory. And actually the next game, and as you know and tease me a lot about, I'm also a Dookie because I went to Duke Law School, and you guys had Duke on the ropes. Makai Mason played a phenomenal game and had Duke on the ropes the last 3 or 4 minutes and almost beat Duke. So there's some great history leading up to the Auburn game. I'm sure in your game plan you had planned that Poukaitis would get 28 points, which was phenomenal. But I was almost more impressed by the last 7 or 8 seconds of the game when Yale had to play great defense and you had to bring in your freshman center, who has not played a lot, but I think who has great potential. And I thought he did a really nice job. You want to talk about the prep and the timeout you had before those last 7 or 8 seconds when you beat Auburn?
Yeah, it kind of got a little crazy at that point in the game, obviously. Danny had fouled out, so we had to go to Sampson, who had played in the game, but we certainly needed his size. And, Sampson is going to be a really good player for us. He's just, a puppy, just learning. And next year, you're going to see him take a jump and a stride. And, people are going to wonder why he's playing at Yale as well. But we got to the point where we had a 3-point lead, I believe, and they got to the free throw line. And they actually had 2-point lead. They missed a bunch of free throws, but they were able to grab and tie up the free throw misses. And the arrow was pointing their way. They had an out of bounds play. They missed a shot. They missed another shot. But Sampson was actually able to block 2 of those shots, late game situation, which really helped us secure that win. And, our guys were, we didn't get caught watching the paint dry, right? I think we kept playing, and that's what really counts. And the same thing happened in the game against Brown, where our guys just kept playing. And they got to the point where they were going to do it together on that offensive set where Matt Nolan hit the shot. But like you're right, in the Auburn game, it was all about the defense and being able to get a stop and come up with a stop and finish the game off that way. And I was really proud of our guys to be able to do it.
I was very interested in the post-game interview on CBS or whatever station it was on, where the interviewer said how calm you looked. And I think your comment was really appropriate. Calm on the outside, maybe not so much on the inside, but it was a phenomenal end of the season, end of the game. Coach, in the last 6 or 7 minutes, I have to raise a topic that is not thrilling to me, which is the landscape of college basketball today. The tournament is phenomenal, but we have a lot of issues that are I think have a negative long-term impact on the NCAA basketball and other sports, and that would be NIL, name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, and unionization. And the transfer portal is, of the 3, the one that bothers me the most. But I wonder if you would mind commenting a little bit about the future of college basketball for mid-majors and others in light of these new developments that are happening almost on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, so the great thing about college basketball, and for me, what makes it great, is the unity of the team and the players together. The things that you just talked about, the NIL or transfer portal, those things breed individualism. And when you have kids think about more about themselves, more about me than we, that takes away from why I got into coaching college basketball. And I think that every coach that you would talk to, they got into it because of the we factor and trying to build something together. That's what makes it really special. When kids start thinking about themselves, about what's going to happen for me and what I'm going to get, that's always been part of the game. But now it's become more part of it. It's become more prevalent. And again, I think you're right. It takes away from college basketball. And we're in a state of transition. It's not what it was, and it's not what it's going to be. And until we get to where it's going to be, it's just a very difficult place. It's some rough sledding. I've talked to a bunch of my friends in the business, and they're talking about, well, this player they're recruiting, he was offered somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million to play. This player was offered $250,000 to $500,000 to play. So they're basing decisions on things other than what's right for them basketball-wise in terms of or university or education. They're basing things on money. So it's become a very transactional. And that's just not why you got into this. When what we do at Yale is we like to think it's transformational, right? That like you're changing minds and helping breed young men to become the best versions of themselves. You know, I would suffice to say that there are coaches around the country right now that will look at a team photo from this year, 2023-24, and not really recognize or remember some of the names of the guys on that team because they only had them for a year. You know, like you said earlier on, this kid's been at 3 universities, so it's going to be hard to know. Like, there's not a kid on any roster that I've ever coached that I don't talk to today at some point throughout the year. Every single kid that's ever played for me, I talk to everybody at least once a year or text them or somehow form of communication. That's not going to be the same going down the road. And I that bothers me to no end. And it hurts to think about how college basketball has changed.
You know, I would want to hear a player chose Yale over Princeton or Princeton over Yale because they like the university better or it fit better for their major, whatever, not because they got a better deal involved in that situation. Richard, we only have 3 minutes left in the show. Do you have a quick comments? Because I know you're involved in NIL professionally. Any thoughts about the topic?
Yeah, I think we're James is correct. I think we're at a point right now in which maybe we're going to be for the next year or two. I think we're going to see revenue sharing in 2 or 3 years in the Power 6, Power 5, probably with the TV contracts. I don't know that NIL will certainly be there. I don't know that it's going to be as significant as it is right now because there's going to be a revenue stream with respect to the revenue sharing. As far as the unionization is concerned, I think it's unmitigated nonsense. What's going on at Dartmouth is preposterous to me. The Penn football team is talking about doing it as well. It's also pending at USC, University of Southern California, with their football and basketball teams. That may make a little more sense if it makes sense at all. But we're not in a good place for college athletics. And as you said, Bob, or you alluded to, the NCAA is completely abdicated. And I'm hoping that the federal government steps in after the election and does something for uniformity purposes.
Yeah, it's a very tough situation that has to be dealt with. I just don't like the idea of look, when I was a student in college, I could have transferred if I wanted to. But it's one thing to go from one school for a year because you want to, not to play at 3 different schools in 3 different years. Coach, do you have a final comment, Coach?
Yeah, just the one, like at Yale right now, we don't really have NIL per se like they do at these other schools or collectives where people play for pay. So as of right now, you go to Yale over Princeton or one of these other schools because you feel it's a better fit, not because you're getting anything from us, not because you're not. Now, if you're going to go to, Stanford or Quinnipiac or some of these other schools, that may come to play. It doesn't at our level as of yet.
As of yet, that's a very big word. Coach, thank you so very much. Richard, so very much. Coach, I hope we get you back again soon because I want to talk more about this NIL situation because it's really bothersome to me as a fan for all these years. Because if I want to watch pro basketball, I'll watch the Knicks. In any event, this has been Bob Potzner with Coach James Jones and Richard Kent. Thank you, gentlemen, so very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.